Hello, everyone. Let me start with a simple story. There was a young man named Alex. He wanted to speak English confidently. He wanted to understand English movies. He wanted to talk to people from different countries. Most importantly, he wanted to stop making grammar mistakes. So he started studying grammar every day. He bought grammar books. He watched grammar lessons on YouTube. He learned grammar rules. He memorized grammar charts. He even wrote grammar notes in a notebook. After a few months, Alex felt very happy. He thought he knew a lot of grammar. He could explain many grammar rules. He knew what a noun was. He knew what a verb was. He knew about present tense, past tense, and future tense. He knew many grammar terms. Everything seemed perfect. Then one day, something unexpected happened. A tourist visited his city and started talking to him in English. The tourist asked a very simple question. "What do you do every day?" Alex understood the question. It was not difficult. He knew every word. He knew the grammar. But suddenly his mind became blank. He wanted to answer, but the words would not come out correctly. He started thinking about grammar rules. He started thinking about sentence structure. He became nervous. Finally, he gave a very short answer and ended the conversation. That day, Alex felt disappointed. He asked himself a very important question. Why do I know grammar but still cannot use it? Maybe you have experienced the same thing. Maybe you have studied English grammar for months. Maybe you know many rules. Maybe you can solve grammar exercises in a book. But when it is time to speak or write, mistakes still happen. If this sounds familiar, then this chapter is especially for you. Alex continued studying grammar. He learned more rules. He learned more exceptions. He learned more complicated lessons. But after some time, he noticed something strange. The more rules he learned, the more confused he became. Every time he spoke English, he worried about making mistakes. Every sentence felt difficult. Every conversation felt stressful. Then one day, his teacher told him something that completely changed his life. The teacher said, "Grammar is not something you memorize. Grammar is something you practice." At first, Alex did not understand. The teacher smiled and gave him a simple example. Imagine you want to learn how to ride a bicycle. You buy 10 books about bicycles. You watch hundreds of videos about bicycles. You memorize every part of the bicycle. You learn how the wheels work. You learn how the brakes work. You learn everything. Now let me ask you a question. Can you ride the bicycle? Of course not. Why? Because riding a bicycle is a skill. Reading about it is not enough. You must practice. English grammar works exactly the same way. Many learners spend years reading grammar rules, but they spend very little time using grammar. They study grammar like a school subject instead of treating it like a skill. Think about it for a moment. A football player does not become great by reading football books. A singer does not become great by reading music theory. A swimmer does not become great by watching swimming videos. They improve through practice. Grammar is no different. The biggest mistake many learners make is believing that learning grammar and using grammar are the same thing. But they are completely different. Learning grammar means understanding the rule. Using grammar means applying the rule naturally in real life. That is where most learners struggle. Let me show you an example. You may know that the correct sentence is, I go to school every day. Simple, right? But during a conversation, many learners suddenly say, I goes to school every day. Why does this happen? Is it because they never learned the rule? No. Most of the time, they already know the rule. The problem is that the rule has not become a habit yet. And this is one of the biggest secrets of mastering English grammar. Grammar is not about knowledge alone. Grammar is about habits. When you practice grammar correctly again and again, your brain slowly creates automatic patterns. These patterns help you build sentences without thinking too much. Think about your own language. When you speak your native language, do you stop and think about grammar rules before every sentence? Of course not. You speak naturally because you have used those patterns thousands of times. The same thing can happen with English. But there is another problem that stops many learners. Fear. Many learners are afraid of grammar mistakes. They want every sentence to be perfect. They want perfect grammar before they start speaking. They want perfect grammar before they start writing. Because of this fear, they stay silent. But here is an important truth. Nobody learns grammar perfectly from the beginning. Even native speakers make grammar mistakes sometimes. Mistakes are not signs of failure. Mistakes are signs of learning. Every grammar mistake teaches you something. Every correction makes you stronger. Every practice session helps your brain improve. I remember a learner who refused to speak English because he was afraid of grammar mistakes. Another learner spoke every day. He made many mistakes. Sometimes his grammar was wrong. Sometimes his sentences sounded strange. But after a few months, something amazing happened. The learner who practiced every day improved much faster. Why? Because he was using grammar. He was turning grammar into a habit. The other learner was only collecting grammar information. This is a lesson every English learner should remember. Knowing grammar is good. Using grammar is better. Today, I want you to stop thinking of grammar as a collection of difficult rules. Start thinking of grammar as a tool. A tool helps you express your thoughts. A tool helps you communicate clearly. A tool becomes useful only when you use it. And here is something exciting. You do not need advanced grammar to start improving. You do not need to learn hundreds of complicated rules first. You can start with simple grammar patterns and build confidence step by step. In fact, some of the most fluent English speakers use simple grammar most of the time. Their secret is not knowing thousands of rules. Their secret is using grammar correctly and consistently. So, remember this powerful idea. The goal is not to know more grammar. The goal is to use grammar more often. Because grammar grows stronger through practice. But now we have an important question. If practicing grammar is the real secret, then what is the easiest way for beginners to practice grammar every day without feeling confused or overwhelmed? The answer is much simpler than most people think. And that is exactly what we are going to discover in the next chapter. Chapter 2. Now let us answer the question from the last chapter. If practicing grammar is the real secret, then what is the easiest way to practice grammar every day? Many learners believe they need difficult grammar books. Some think they need hundreds of exercises. Others believe they must learn advanced grammar before they can improve. But the truth is much simpler. Let me tell you a story. There was a learner named David. Just like many English learners, he wanted to master grammar. Every day he watched grammar lessons. Every day he learned new rules. He studied present tense, past tense, future tense, articles, prepositions, and many other topics. But there was one problem. He kept forgetting everything. Whenever he learned a new grammar rule, it felt easy. He understood the explanation. He completed the exercises. He felt confident. Then a few days later, the rule seemed to disappear from his mind. He became frustrated. One day he asked his teacher, "Why do I keep forgetting grammar?" The teacher smiled and asked him a question. "How many sentences did you create with the grammar rule?" David looked confused. The teacher asked again, "After learning the rule, how many times did you actually use it?" David thought for a moment. The answer was almost none. That was the day he discovered one of the biggest secrets of language learning. Grammar grows through sentences, not through memorization, not through reading, not through watching videos. Grammar becomes strong when you use it in simple sentences again and again. This changed everything. Instead of learning 10 grammar rules every week, David started practicing one grammar pattern at a time. Let me show you what he did. He started with one very simple pattern. I am. Most learners already know these two words, but look at how many sentences we can create. I am happy. I am tired. I am hungry. I am busy. I am ready. I am at home. I am learning English. I am watching a video. I am improving every day. Suddenly, one simple grammar pattern created many correct sentences, and something amazing happened. The more sentences David created, the easier grammar became. Why? Because his brain was seeing the same pattern again and again. This is exactly how children learn language. Children do not study grammar books. Children hear patterns repeatedly. Then they use those patterns repeatedly. Little by little, grammar becomes natural. Now let me ask you a simple question. Which learner will improve faster? The learner who memorizes 100 grammar rules, or the learner who creates 100 sentences. Most people think the first learner will improve faster, but usually the second learner wins. Why? Because language is a skill. Skills improve through practice. Imagine someone learning to play the piano. Reading about the piano is useful, but playing the piano is what creates improvement. Grammar works exactly the same way. This is why simple sentences are so powerful. Many learners ignore simple sentences because they seem too easy. They want difficult grammar. They want advanced vocabulary. They want complicated structures. But strong English is built on simple foundations. Think about a house. Before building the roof, you must build the foundation. Without a strong foundation, the house becomes weak. The same thing happens with English grammar. Simple sentences create a strong foundation, and a strong foundation creates fluent English. David continued his new method. Every day he chose one grammar pattern. Then he created 20 or 30 simple sentences. For example, when he learned the pattern, I have, he practiced like this. I have a book. I have a phone. I have a car. I have a brother. I have a friend. I have a question. I have some free time. I have English class today. The sentences were simple, but every sentence strengthened the grammar pattern. Soon he noticed something interesting. He no longer needed to think about the rule. The sentences started coming naturally. That is when real learning begins. Now let us talk about another mistake many learners make. They try to learn too much at once. Today they study present tense. Tomorrow they study future tense. The next day they study conditionals, then passive voice, then reported speech, then another grammar lesson. Their brain becomes overloaded. Imagine trying to carry 20 heavy bags at the same time. Eventually something falls. The same thing happens with grammar. Too much information creates confusion. That is why successful learners focus on one small step at a time. One grammar pattern, many sentences, lots of repetition, simple practice. This approach may seem slow, but it actually creates faster results. I remember another learner who practiced only one grammar structure for an entire week. Some people laughed at him. They thought he was wasting time. But after 1 week, he could use that grammar naturally. While other learners were still trying to remember the rule, he was already speaking with confidence. That is the power of repetition. Now here is something even more exciting. You can practice grammar anywhere. You do not need a classroom. You do not need a teacher beside you. You do not even need a grammar book all the time. Look around your room. Create simple sentences. The chair is brown. The window is open. My phone is on the table. I am sitting on a chair. I am watching a lesson. I am learning grammar. Every sentence is practice. Every sentence strengthens your grammar. Every sentence builds confidence. This is exactly why many fluent speakers improve quickly. They do not wait for the perfect study session. They turn everyday life into grammar practice. While walking, they create sentences. While cooking, they create sentences. While traveling, they create sentences. While working, they create sentences. English becomes part of their life. And when English becomes part of your life, improvement becomes much easier. But there is something important you must understand. Do not worry about making mistakes. Many learners stop practicing because they want every sentence to be perfect. That is impossible. Even advanced learners make mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning. Every mistake teaches your brain something new. The goal is not perfect grammar. The goal is better grammar. Small improvement every day is enough. David followed this simple system for several months. He stopped chasing hundreds of grammar rules. He focused on simple patterns. He created simple sentences. He practiced every day. And slowly, his grammar improved. Speaking became easier. Writing became easier. Understanding English became easier. All because he discovered one simple truth. Grammar grows through practice, not through memorization alone. But now we arrive at another important question. If creating simple sentences is so effective, then why do many learners still forget grammar after a few days? Why do some grammar rules stay in the mind while others disappear completely? The answer has everything to do with memory. And once you understand this secret, your grammar learning will become much easier. That is exactly what we will discover in the next chapter. Chapter 3. Now let us talk about something that surprises almost every English learner. Why do some grammar rules stay in your mind while others disappear after a few days? Have you ever studied a grammar lesson, understood everything, completed the exercises, and felt confident? But then 1 week later you could barely remember the rule? If this has happened to you, do not worry. You are not alone. In fact, this happens to millions of English learners around the world. Let me tell you a story. There was a learner named Emma. She loved learning English grammar. Every day she watched grammar videos. She learned new rules and wrote them in a notebook. Whenever she finished a lesson, she felt excited because everything seemed easy. She could answer the questions correctly. She could explain the rule to other people. She believed she had mastered it. But after a few days, something strange happened. The grammar rule that seemed so clear suddenly became difficult to remember. When she tried to speak English, she forgot which tense to use. When she tried to write sentences, she became confused. This happened again and again. Eventually, she started believing that she had a bad memory. Maybe you have felt the same way. Maybe you have told yourself, I keep forgetting grammar. Maybe I'm not good at English. But the truth is very different. Emma did not have a bad memory. She simply did not understand how memory works. One day she met an experienced English teacher. She explained her problem and asked, "Why do I keep forgetting grammar?" The teacher smiled and said, "Because your brain works exactly the way it was designed to work." Emma looked confused. The teacher continued, "Your brain does not keep everything forever. It keeps what you use and removes what you ignore." That simple sentence changed everything. Think about your daily life. Can you remember every meal you ate 3 months ago? Probably not. Can you remember every conversation you had last year? Probably not. Why? Because your brain removes information that it believes is not important. This is actually a good thing. Imagine if your brain remembered every tiny detail from every day of your life. It would become overloaded. So your brain is always asking one important question. Do I need this information again? If the answer is yes, the memory becomes stronger. If the answer is no, the memory slowly fades away. This is exactly what happens with grammar. When you learn a grammar rule once and never use it again, your brain thinks it is unimportant. As a result, the memory becomes weaker. But when you use the grammar rule repeatedly, your brain receives a different message. It starts thinking, this information is important. I need to keep it. Then the memory becomes stronger and stronger. This is why repetition is so powerful. Many learners believe they need more grammar lessons. In reality, many learners need more grammar review. Learning new information is important, but reviewing old information is just as important. Imagine trying to fill a bucket with water while there is a hole at the bottom. No matter how much water you add, the bucket never becomes full. That is what happens when learners keep learning new grammar without reviewing old grammar. Information enters the brain, but much of it slowly disappears. Successful learners understand this secret. They spend time reviewing what they have already learned. They revisit grammar patterns. They create new sentences. They use grammar in conversations. They write short paragraphs. Every review session makes the memory stronger. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine you learn the grammar pattern I have. On the first day, you create 10 sentences. On the second day, you create 10 more sentences. On the third day, you use the pattern while speaking. A week later, you use it again while writing. Every time you use the pattern, your brain strengthens the connection. Eventually, the grammar becomes automatic. You no longer struggle to remember it. It simply becomes part of your English. Emma decided to test this idea. Instead of learning 5 new grammar rules every week, she focused on reviewing what she had already learned. Every morning she spent a few minutes reading old grammar notes. Every afternoon she created simple sentences. Every evening she practiced speaking. The grammar lessons she once forgot started staying in her memory. After a few months, she noticed a huge difference. Speaking became easier. Writing became easier. Most importantly, she stopped feeling frustrated. Now let us talk about another important secret. Many learners think mistakes are proof that they are forgetting grammar. But mistakes can actually help memory. Every time you make a grammar mistake and correct it, your brain learns something valuable. Think about a child learning to walk. The child falls many times before walking confidently. Each fall teaches the child something. Grammar works in the same way. Every mistake is a learning opportunity. Every correction strengthens understanding. This is why you should never be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes are not enemies. Mistakes are teachers. Another powerful way to remember grammar is through writing. Writing forces your brain to use grammar actively. Even writing 5 simple sentences every day can improve your memory. For example, you can write about your room, your family, your plans, or your daily routine. The topic does not matter. The important thing is using grammar regularly. Speaking works the same way. The more you speak, the more opportunities your brain has to practice grammar. Little by little, the rules stop feeling like rules. They become habits. And habits are much easier to remember than information. This is exactly how fluent speakers use grammar. They do not stop during every sentence and think about grammar rules. They have used the pattern so many times that the grammar feels natural. That is the real goal. Not memorizing grammar, not collecting grammar rules. The real goal is making grammar a natural part of your English. So remember this important lesson. Forgetting grammar does not mean you are a bad learner. It simply means your brain needs more repetition, more review, and more practice. Every sentence you create makes your memory stronger. Every conversation helps grammar stay in your mind. Every review session builds a stronger foundation. The learners who become successful are not always the smartest learners. They are often the learners who keep practicing, keep reviewing, and keep moving forward. But now we arrive at a very exciting question. Once grammar starts staying in your memory, how do you use it naturally while speaking? How do you stop translating every sentence in your head? How do you make grammar automatic during real conversations? The answer can completely change the way you speak English, and that is exactly what we will discover in the next chapter. Chapter 4. Now we come to one of the most important chapters in this entire video. Up to this point, you have learned that grammar grows through practice. You have learned that simple sentences are powerful. You have learned that repetition helps grammar stay in your memory. But now we face a very important question. If you already know grammar and can remember it, why do you still struggle when speaking English? Why do many learners understand grammar perfectly while studying, but suddenly become confused during conversations? Let me tell you a story. There was a learner named Michael. He had spent almost 2 years studying English grammar. He knew many grammar rules. He could solve grammar exercises quickly. He could even explain grammar topics to other learners. But whenever someone started a real conversation in English, something strange happened. His mind slowed down. He knew the grammar, but he could not use it naturally. Every sentence felt like a puzzle. Before speaking, he would stop and think. First, he thought about the grammar rule. Then, he thought about the correct tense. Then, he thought about sentence structure. Then, he worried about making mistakes. By the time he was ready to speak, the conversation had already moved on. This problem is very common among English learners. The reason is simple. Michael had learned grammar as information, but he had not trained his brain to use grammar automatically. Think about driving a car. When a person first learns to drive, every action requires attention. They think about the steering wheel. They think about the mirrors. They think about the pedals. They think about every movement. Driving feels difficult, but after months of practice, something amazing happens. They no longer think about every small action. Driving becomes automatic. The same thing happens with English grammar. At the beginning, you must think carefully about every sentence. But with enough practice, grammar becomes automatic. Instead of thinking about the rule, you simply use it. This is where many learners make a mistake. They spend most of their time studying grammar and very little time using grammar. They know the rule, but they do not give their brain enough opportunities to practice the rule in real situations. Imagine a football player who studies football strategies every day but never steps onto the field. Would that player become confident during a match? Of course not. Confidence comes from practice. Grammar confidence works exactly the same way. The more you use grammar, the more automatic it becomes. Michael eventually discovered this secret. He stopped spending all his time reading grammar explanations. Instead, he started using grammar every day. When he learned a grammar pattern, he immediately created sentences with it. If he learned the present simple tense, He talked about his daily routine. If he learned the past tense, he talked about yesterday. If he learned the future tense, he talked about his plans. Little by little, something began to change. The grammar patterns that once felt difficult started feeling familiar. The sentences started coming faster. The pauses became shorter. His confidence began to grow. Now let us talk about another problem that affects many learners. Translation. Many English learners translate every sentence from their native language into English. First, they create the idea in their own language. Then, they search for English words. Then, they think about grammar. Then, they try to build the sentence. This process takes a lot of time. It makes speaking feel slow and stressful. But there is good news. The more you practice simple English sentences, the less you need translation. Your brain slowly begins to recognize English patterns naturally. For example, when someone asks, "What do you do every day?" you no longer need to translate. Your brain automatically produces answers like, "I go to work," "I study English," "I play football." This is the moment when speaking starts becoming easier. I remember a learner who practiced English for just 10 minutes every day. He described his room, his family, his food, and his daily activities. At first, he translated every sentence. But after a few months, something surprising happened. He realized he was creating English sentences without translation. The words simply appeared. He felt excited because for the first time English felt natural. This is what happens when grammar becomes automatic. You stop thinking about every rule. You start focusing on communication. Another important lesson is that speed comes from repetition. Many learners want to speak fluently immediately. They become frustrated when speaking feels slow. But fluency is not built overnight. Every fluent speaker was once a beginner. Every confident speaker once struggled with simple sentences. The difference is that they kept practicing. They repeated grammar patterns until those patterns became natural. Think about typing on a keyboard. When you first learn typing, you look at every key. Your fingers move slowly. You make mistakes. But after enough practice, your fingers know exactly where to go. Speaking English works the same way. Repetition trains your brain to produce grammar patterns quickly and naturally. This is why daily speaking practice is so important. Even 5 or 10 minutes of practice every day can create huge improvements over time. Another thing you must remember is that perfection is not necessary. Many learners wait until their grammar is perfect before speaking. They believe they need to know every rule before having conversations. But that day never comes. Even advanced speakers continue learning. The goal is not perfect grammar. The goal is effective communication. The more you communicate, the better your grammar becomes. The more you speak, the stronger your confidence grows. Michael finally understood this lesson. He stopped chasing perfection. He focused on practice. He focused on communication. He focused on using grammar instead of simply studying grammar. After several months, people noticed a huge difference. He spoke more naturally. He responded more quickly. He felt more relaxed during conversations. Most importantly, he enjoyed speaking English. What once felt difficult now felt possible. And this can happen to you as well. If you continue practicing, continue speaking, and continue using grammar every day, your brain will gradually make grammar automatic. The rules that seem difficult today will feel easy tomorrow. The sentences that feel slow today will become faster in the future. The confidence you are searching for is built through practice. But now we arrive at another exciting question. If automatic grammar comes from daily practice, what is the best daily routine for mastering English grammar? What can beginners do every day to improve faster without feeling overwhelmed? The answer is simple, practical, and incredibly powerful. And that is exactly what we will discover in the next chapter. Chapter 5. Now we come to the chapter that can completely change your English grammar journey. Up to this point, we have learned why grammar should be practiced, how simple sentences build strong grammar, how memory works, and how grammar becomes automatic through daily use. But now we face the most important question of all. What should you actually do every day? Many learners understand grammar lessons, but they do not have a clear plan. They wake up each day wondering what to study. One day they watch a grammar video. The next day they memorize vocabulary. Then they skip practice for several days. Because of this, their progress becomes slow. Let me tell you a story. There was a learner named James. He loved learning English, but he always felt confused. Every week he searched for a new method. Sometimes he followed grammar books. Sometimes he watched YouTube lessons. Sometimes he downloaded language learning apps. For a few days he felt motivated. Then he became overwhelmed. There was simply too much information. One day he asked his teacher, "What is the fastest way to improve my grammar?" The teacher smiled and said, "Stop looking for the perfect method. Build the perfect routine." Those words changed everything. James realized that successful learners are not always the smartest learners. They are often the most consistent learners. They follow a simple daily routine and trust the process. So James created a daily grammar practice plan. The plan was simple enough for beginners, but powerful enough to create real results. Every morning he spent just 5 minutes reviewing one grammar pattern. Not 5 different grammar topics, just one. For example, if he was practicing the present simple tense, he reviewed a few example sentences. He read them slowly and carefully. He focused on understanding how the pattern worked. Then he created 5 new sentences of his own. Simple sentences like, "I wake up early. I drink tea every morning. I study English every day." These sentences were not difficult, but they strengthened his grammar foundation. After that, he continued with his normal day. In the afternoon, he spent another 5 minutes doing something very powerful. He used the same grammar pattern while speaking. If he was walking outside, he described what he saw. If he was at home, he described what he was doing. He used the grammar pattern naturally instead of simply studying it. This small habit made a huge difference because grammar started moving from his notebook into real life. Then in the evening, he completed the final step. He wrote 5 simple sentences about his day using the same grammar structure. Sometimes he wrote about his family. Sometimes he wrote about his work. Sometimes he wrote about his plans. The topic did not matter. The important thing was repetition. Morning review, afternoon speaking, evening writing. The entire routine took only a few minutes, but it created powerful results. After several weeks, James noticed something surprising. The grammar patterns he practiced every day became easier to remember. The sentences came more naturally. His confidence improved. Most importantly, he no longer felt overwhelmed. This is one of the biggest secrets of successful language learning. You do not need to study for 3 hours every day. You need consistency. Imagine two learners. One learner studies grammar for 3 hours on Sunday and then does nothing for the rest of the week. Another learner studies grammar for 15 minutes every day. Which learner will improve faster? Most people think the first learner works harder, but the second learner usually gets better results. Why? Because daily contact keeps grammar alive in the brain. Every day becomes another opportunity to strengthen memory and build habits. Another important lesson is that small progress creates big results over time. Many learners quit because they want immediate improvement. They practice for 1 week and expect fluency. They practice for 1 month and expect perfection. When those results do not appear quickly, they become discouraged. But language learning is like planting a tree. On the first day you plant the seed, nothing seems to happen. A few days later, nothing seems to happen. Even after several weeks, the changes may be small. But underneath the ground, the roots are growing. Then one day the tree begins to appear. The same thing happens with grammar. Every sentence you create is building stronger roots. Every review session strengthens your foundation. Every conversation helps your brain become more comfortable with English. Progress may feel slow at first, but it is happening. I remember another learner who followed a simple grammar routine for 6 months. At the beginning, he struggled with basic sentences. He often forgot grammar rules. Speaking felt difficult, but he trusted the process. Every day he practiced a little. Every day he reviewed. Every day he spoke and wrote. 6 months later, his improvement amazed everyone around him. He was not perfect, but he was confident. He could communicate clearly. He could create sentences naturally. He could understand grammar much more easily. The difference was not talent. The difference was consistency. There is another reason daily routines are powerful. They remove excuses. When your routine is simple, it becomes easier to follow. Many learners fail because they create unrealistic plans. They promise themselves they will study for 3 hours every day. After a few days, they become tired and quit. A simple routine is much more effective because it can become a habit. 5 minutes of practice is better than no practice. 10 minutes every day is better than 1 hour once a week. Small actions repeated consistently create extraordinary results. This is exactly how fluent speakers improve. They do not wait for motivation. They do not wait for perfect conditions. They practice even on busy days. They keep the habit alive. Over time, those small efforts create big changes. James eventually realized that mastering grammar was not about finding secret shortcuts. It was about following simple daily actions. Review, speak, write, repeat, day after day, week after week, month after month. That routine transformed his English, and it can transform yours too. So remember this important lesson. Do not focus on studying more. Focus on practicing consistently. Do not chase complicated methods. Follow simple habits. The learners who improve the fastest are often the learners who keep showing up every day. But now we arrive at one final and exciting question. What happens when someone follows this routine for months? What happens when grammar becomes a daily habit? What kind of transformation takes place in a learner's confidence, speaking ability, and overall English skills? The answer is inspiring, and that is exactly what we will discover in the final chapter.